Following the destruction of the Earth defense grid and the death of President Clark, Captain John Sheridan surrendered himself to the Earth Force's authorities. With him were several other ship captains and a delegation from the major races and League worlds. All non-Earth vessels moved out of the Sol system, except for a few White Stars and one Charlan cruiser. Many in the Earth Force Command wanted Sheridan arrested and tried for treason and mutiny. Still, many others saw Sheridan as a hero, and they had the support of many in the political and civilian community. Sheridan did what no one else could or would do: fight and defeat Morgan Clark. After a long debate, and with some pressure from the other races, Sheridan was given the option to retire from the fleet with no restrictions on where he could go or live. However, before he would agree to this, he made several conditions of his own. The first condition was that every Earth ship, crew, and captain who joined him would receive total and complete amnesty for all actions taken during the war. All personnel would be allowed to continue their career in the military or retire with full benefit. The second one was that Mars would be granted its complete and unconditional independence from Earth with no harassment or restrictions. His final condition was more personal. After the victory of Clark's Shadow Omegas, Commander Susan Ivanova was gravely injured and was sent back to Babylon 5. During this time, a piece of alien technology was used to heal her fully and return her to duty. As a reward for her courage, loyalty, leadership, and friendship, Commander was promoted to full captain and given command of the Advanced Warlock-class destroyer EAS Titan for its one-year shakedown cruise. But there was also the task of finding and trying those who had committed war crimes during Clark's reign. While most of Clark's followers were killed, many remained in hiding. Those who were already in custody had their trials almost as soon as the war came to an end. For Captain Trevor Hall of the Heracles, after the Battle of Proxima, the ship was sent to Beta 9 for repairs, and Captain Hall was held under arrest until the war ended. When he faced a military tribunal for his actions, the charges were murder, terrorism, piracy, and cowardice in the face of the enemy. His only defense was that he was following orders. It only took about 2 hours for a guilty verdict, and he was demoted to the rank of lieutenant and sentenced to 50 years in prison. He committed suicide 7 months later. Heracles' executive officer, Commander Sandra Levitt, was then put on trial for her actions. She pleaded guilty to all charges, but a plea from Sheridan resulted in her being discharged from the service with limited benefits and generally left to her own devices. Commander Levitt would return to duty 6 years later to fight in the Drac War. Ironically, as the captain of a new EAS Pulak, she would be killed in combat several years later. President Sheridan would personally send a letter to her husband and children about her bravery and sacrifice. Captain Edward McDougan of the Vista would return to duty and serve as a task force commander during the Drac War. He would retire in 2286 as a full admiral and spend his remaining years as a guest speaker at the Earth Force Academy. He would pass away in 2291. Captain Jack Maynard of the E.A.S. Cortez was cleared of any wrongdoing, as all his actions were taken in the search and rescue of Earth ships and their crews. And since he never engaged in any combat missions, he and his crew were given the Earth Force Medal of Valor and returned to service. Many other Earth ships would be allowed to return to service once they were cleared of any wrongdoing. In some cases, Earth sent other ships to find them and bring them in under an offer of full amnesty. Most ships did return. In some instances, the vessel was renamed, and the crew was disbanded and reassigned to new positions, issued new service records, and allowed to continue their careers. A few ships remain unaccounted for, and efforts to locate them are ongoing. As for Night Watch, most of its personnel were investigated, and those who did not commit any serious crimes were quietly dismissed from service and forgotten. But by far, one of the most challenging issues was with the EAS Lysander, the ship that gave Earth its only victory. Captain Frank Regun used a false distress call to lure enemy ships into an ambush. Such tactics were considered illegal, However, since Captain Sheridan had done the same during the Minbari War and faced no consequences, it created a dilemma for the tribunal members. In the end, Captain Regun was cleared of any wrongdoing and reinstated to duty. But after learning that Sheridan would face no punishment for what many considered open treason, he resigned his commission and left to work for a private cargo company. Until he died in 2289, Regun still harbored a great disdain for Sheridan and his people. Following his resignation from the Earth Force, Sheridan held a press conference announcing the creation of the new Interstellar Alliance. This new government would be formed from all the major and most powerful races that had supported him during the Shadow and Earth Civil Wars. Sheridan would serve as the first president, with Minbari Ambassador Delenn, his new wife, as the vice president. This announcement came as a surprise to many in the Earth Dome. However, after assurances from other major races, which included the sharing of technology and resources, the Earth Alliance openly joined and has been a major supporter of the Interstellar Alliance since then. But even now, a significant threat to both the IA and Earth was lurking in the shadows, and soon would drag the Alliance into yet another bloody war. The creation of the Interstellar Alliance was first conceived shortly after the Shadow War. Captain Sheridan needed a way to unite the League of Non-Aligned Worlds, allowing them to rebuild safely and protecting them from threats like the Drak and Large Raider Group. However, the paranoia and self-centeredness of the leaders of these races made it nearly impossible to achieve this unity. Despite the trust he had fostered during the Shadow War, the leaders began to bicker among themselves once the conflict ended. Sheridan decided to use this distrust to his advantage. Following the Shadow War and during the Earth Civil War, Sheridan began sending White Stars on minor missions to Asteroid Field. He ordered them to fire on a few asteroids, then had Commander Susan Ivanova, who anchored the Babylon 5 propaganda broadcast, announce that nothing had occurred in those areas. The League would subsequently run around in a conspiracy-fueled frenzy trying to uncover what was happening. Eventually, they confronted Sheridan and demanded answers. When Sheridan tried to dismiss the incidents as mere rumors, their paranoia only intensified. In a weak attempt at a power play, the League insisted that the White Star Fleet be sent into the League of Non-Aligned Worlds to protect them from these mysterious events. In return, they promised to support any actions he took and would even accompany him if necessary. For Sheridan, this was a significant victory. By playing the role of a weak leader and allowing the League to believe they had achieved a considerable victory, he gained support from almost all the League races, as well as from the Centauri and Minbari, to back him in his fight against President Clark. In 2261, the Interstellar Alliance established as an official government, Sheridan could begin the process of rebuilding countless worlds devastated by ongoing wars and disasters. Sheridan would lead the Alliance from Babylon 5 until their new headquarters were constructed on Minbar. This move represented a sign of openness from the normally isolationist Minbari, serving as a beacon of hope and trust for the other races. At Sheridan's suggestion, Captain Elizabeth Loxley was appointed commander of Babylon 5, with the clear understanding that she would be in command and not Sheridan. During the Alliance's first year, they faced new challenges and enemies, including the Centauri War. The Drak, seeking revenge for Ambassador Londo Mollari's betrayal, forced the new Centauri leadership into numerous minor skirmishes with the League and even launched an attack on Babylon 5 itself. The war lasted only a few months, but it ended with the Narn and Dratzi fleets attacking Centauri Prime, causing horrific damage and claiming hundreds of thousands of lives. Londo Mollari would become the new emperor and temporarily leave the Alliance to restore order to the Centauri Republic, but he returned shortly after his death when Emperor Vir Kodo ascended to the throne. The Alliance also made significant efforts to dismantle the local raider groups that had been terrorizing several of the weaker League races. Another brief conflict arose when a nomadic race attacked the station. This battle occurred just as the majority of the White Star Fleet was engaged in combat with a raider group. The struggle was fierce and costly, but the station held its ground, and the attackers retreated beyond Babylon 5's space. By the end of the first year, the Interstellar Alliance was beginning its move to Minbar, leaving the station in the hands of Earth Force. For the next 4 years, peace prevailed, but this tranquility was about to end. In 2267, the Interstellar Alliance was preparing to celebrate its 5th anniversary with much fanfare and excitement. At this time, almost all races were at peace, and the aftermath of the previous wars had been addressed. Commerce was rapidly growing across the economies of the member world. Centauri Prime had rejoined the Alliance, the Narn regime had successfully rebuilt its worlds, and the Minbari had abandoned entirely their isolationism to engage with the wider galaxy. One of the first projects President Sheridan approved was the creation of a new class of ship designed to lead the Alliance into the future. This class was known as the White Star-class destroyers. With the assistance of Michael Garibaldi, utilizing resources from Edgar's Industries, the new ships would be named ISA Victory. Excalibur would amalgamate Earth, Minbari, and Vorlon technologies into a single vessel. The project was kept secret, intended to be revealed during the anniversary event. Meanwhile, the alien race known as the Drak had been quietly gathering forces and were about to launch a significant attack on Earth using a shadow planet killer, commonly referred to as a death cloud. They planned to destroy Earth as an act of revenge, followed by attacks on Minbari, Centauri, and finally the Narn homeworlds. With the Alliance crippled, the Drak aimed to purge the population of every Alliance world and establish their empire from the ashes. When the technomage named Galen learned of this threat, he sent warnings to Sheridan and a few select individuals in hopes of thwarting the Drak. One of those contacted was Earth Force Captain Leonard Anderson of the ES Sharon. Upon recognizing the impending danger facing Earth, Sheridan and Anderson took the 2 prototype ships to investigate the recently destroyed planet, Daltron 7. Upon their arrival in the system, they encountered the main Drak fleet escorting the Death Cloud. After a brief skirmish, both vessels managed to escape and return to their respective bases on Earth. During the journey, Sheridan urged Captain Elizabeth Loxley, commander of Babylon 5, to sound the alarm and mobilize every available ship to defend the planet. When the 2 Victory-class ships arrived in the Sol system, they were met by several hundred Omega destroyers and vessels from other allied races, including Minbari, Narn, and members of the League. Moments later, the Drak Armada jumped in, with the Shadow Cloud following closely behind. Recognizing the threat posed by the planet killer, Sheridan ordered all ships to focus on it while leaving the Drak vessels to the planetary defense grid. In a climactic battle that resulted in hundreds of ships lost on both sides, the IS Victory sacrificed itself to destroy the Death Cloud. However, the Drak still had one final trick up their sleeve. In an act of malice, they released a bioweapon, dubbed the Drak Plague, into Earth's atmosphere. The planet was placed under total quarantine with orders to fire upon any ship attempting to enter or leave. After several weeks of study, it was discovered that the virus would require at least 5 years to adapt to humans before it became fatal. This was the only bright spot in an otherwise dire situation. Additionally, the Drak attacked and destroyed the shipyards where the Victory-class ships were built, making Excalibur a one-of-a-kind vessel. In a desperate effort to save Earth, the Interstellar Alliance converted Excalibur into a research vessel, granting it full and unrestricted access to the territories of all member races. Under the command of Captain Matthew Gideon, Excalibur would spend the next 2 years searching for a cure, eventually succeeding. During this time, the war with the Drak escalated as more Alliance ships were deployed to the front lines. Fighting the Drak was challenging since they were nomadic and lacked a real home world or territory, which made confrontations more about happenstance than proactive engagement. However, after nearly 12 years of brutal conflict, the Alliance dealt a devastating blow to the Drac. By tricking them into believing the Alliance had a central headquarters on an isolated world, the Drac sent their remaining fleet to attack it, only to arrive in an empty system with the system's sun about to go nova. The Drac fleet was annihilated, reducing their threat to only minor raids and small encounters. After over a decade of warfare, the Drac threat was finally eliminated. Now, the galaxy could begin to rebuild and resume its mission of peaceful exploration and trade.